Hello and welcome. I'm really pleased today. This is our first Volcano Awareness Month dialogue, and we have Dr. Thomas Christopher, who is a Caribbean scientist. He's a member of the Montserrat Volcano Observatory and also the Seismic Research Centre. Welcome, Dr. Christopher. How are you?
Good day. I'm good. How are
Excellent.
you?
I'm good. I'm well. I'm well indeed.
Nice. Nice.
So before we start, just tell us a bit about your professional background.
I'm based at the Montserrat Volcano Observatory as one of the scientists here. My specialty is the chemistry of volcanic systems. So I look at the magma chemistry, the gas chemistry, and the gas fluxes of the volcano in Montserrat. And as you said, I am actually employed by the Seismic Research Centre, SRC, which is based in Trinidad, and their portfolio is for all of the English-speaking Caribbean islands. So the way how the observatory in Montserrat is set up is that the the government of Montserrat employs an organization to run the observatory, and they're the ones who actually hire the scientific staff. So the scientific staff are never employed by the government of Montserrat. They're employed by whoever or whichever organization is running the observatory at the particular time. So when I first got here, I was employed by the British Geological Survey because they were the ones running the observatory. Now it's the Seismic Research Centre. Now, having said that, because we're working for the Seismic Research Centre, it gives us access to all of the volcanoes in the English-speaking Caribbean. So that is why I would have spent that much time in St Vincent when they had the eruption because it became part of my job because I was working for the organization who was responsible for that volcano. And that the same can be said for Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, any of these islands where there's a volcanic issue, I'm expected to be doing work on these volcanoes. And we do work on these volcanoes in peacetime, for want of a better word. We collect background data so we can have baselines, so we can tell, hopefully, if there's an issue, if there's subtle changes in what the background data is. So that is basically what I'm doing here. And I am from Montserrat. So the eruption of this volcano is what got me interested in this. And as I said, I specialized in the chemistry of volcanic systems. So I could technically call myself a geochemist.
Okay.
Yeah.
So of course, many people are aware that Montserrat remains an active volcanic island. Based on the latest scientific monitoring, what are the key indicators that scientists use to understand volcanic activity, and how does this information help protect communities?
Okay, I'm sharing a graph here. I'm not sure if it's visible. Is it
Yeah,
visible?
I can see it.
Yeah. So this graph has, we look at a number of different parameters from this volcanic system, and there are common ones which exist in most volcanoes, and earthquakes are a common parameter for volcanic systems. Whenever a volcano is erupting, you would expect earthquakes, and that's simply because you have material which is forcing its way up through the crust and trying to make it to the surface. And it has to make space, and it's trying to make space in rock. So rock is brittle, so it breaks and snaps and generates earthquakes. I mean, that sort of um, activity also deforms the crust. It also causes the island or the localized area, if you're in a larger country, to deform. The crust actually moves up or down based on what's happening. It's called inflation or deflation. And then they also generate gases. Volcanic eruptions also generate gases, and the main one being sulfur dioxide. So this plot I have here is a plot of the entire eruption, looking at these three things which I just mentioned: the earthquakes, the deformation of the crust, and the sulfur dioxide flux. And I'm guessing most people would know that this volcano has not been a continuous eruption by any means. It's been start. So if you look at this graph, you can see that the gray areas are when it's actually erupting or pushing material to the surface. And the white areas are when it's not erupting. And as you can see that the earthquakes correlate very well with activity at the surface. When it's pushing out lava at the surface, we got quite a few earthquakes. This top graph is a histogram. So the higher the peaks are, these red peaks are, is the more earthquakes per day. So as you can see, when it's not erupting in the white periods, there's much less of the activity going on. So that's a good one-to-one correlation in terms of surface activity. The second graph, which is the deformation, it has what seems to be like a jigsaw type pattern where it goes up and comes down, it goes up and comes down. And as you can see very closely that whenever there's a gray bit, when it's actually putting material to the surface, that line is going down. When you're in the white, that line is going up. And what that line is the distance between the two most distant GPS points on the island. And basically, what that line is telling you is that when the volcano is not erupting, those 2 points are actually moving away from each other. The island is actually inflating. It's actually doming up. And then when it starts to erupt, they start moving back towards each other. So this is interpreted as what we have is a continuous influx of magma from depth that is filling the magma chamber over time. So over time, we see this net inflation of the island slowly on the order of millimeters. So you wouldn't notice it, but the instrument can definitely detect that. So on the order of millimeters, it is inflating over time. And then when you start to push material out, it goes down. So it's like when you're trying to inflate a balloon, as long as there's no air coming out, that balloon would keep getting bigger. But when you start to release air, it gets smaller. And that's the mindset that we're using to explain what is happening here. We have magma coming in, causing the magma chamber to inflate because there is a space issue. So as long as it can accommodate a certain volume of material or for a certain volume of anything, if you add more, then it has to expand to accommodate that material. So that is what we're seeing here. And then we're also seeing the sulfur dioxide, which is cyclic throughout the whole eruption, still going. So two things I want to note. The earthquakes, they definitely suggest that there's nothing happening at the surface, which is true. But these other two graphs, the deformation graph, which is the second one, and the sulfur dioxide say something very different. So if you notice the second graph, that line, it started in red and it's now in blue. That is still increasing. And that is saying to us that even though there's nothing happening at the surface, there's still magma infiltrating beneath the volcano and the reservoir is being replenished. So it's only a matter of time before it erupts again. The same thing can be said about the sulfur dioxide flux, which is at the base. If I were to go to St. Vincent right now and try and measure sulfur dioxide flux, the value would be zero. There's none. However, this volcano is still producing sulfur dioxide from depth and it's still inflating. So that tells us, even though there's nothing happening at the surface at the moment, it would be very irresponsible to declare this eruption over because it's not stopped yet. So we need to educate the public as to what we're seeing and what the ramifications of it are. And people need to understand that even though you're not seeing anything happening right now, it doesn't mean that the danger is clear.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So that really also leads me to my second question. So, of course, Montserrat has demonstrated remarkable adaptability over the past 3 decades. So from an earth science perspective, what practical steps can individuals, families, schools, businesses and community organisations take to strengthen preparedness and support sustainable livelihoods alongside such an activity?
Yeah, one of the key components of a volcano observatory would be the outreach department, the education and outreach department. And what we need to do is to get people normalized to the fact that there is a volcano on island, and it depends on what your vocation is. You might need to be a bit more vigilant
Mhm.
or less vigilant. So, and what I mean is that if you're a sand miner who works in the zone,
Right.
your vigilance needs to be a lot different to someone who works in the north.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if there's an issue, you would be the first person to have a problem with the
Yeah.
volcano.
Okay.
So the idea is to educate people, it's just to make them understand what the hazards are, and how to respond to them if needs be, and to be very responsible when they're in zones where
Yeah.
there might be a problem. It's education, outreach, and hoping that they trust what you're saying. So it's to try and develop a good
It's that
relationship.
it's that trust and confidence,
Yes,
particularly if you're talking about proximity awareness,
yeah,
public
definitely.
accept the messaging, and of course understand the messages
Yeah.
from
So
the
the
scientists.
the messages that we would give to people who work in the north will be very different to the guys who work in the zone. The sand miners, they get a different sort of briefing. Even the police officers, when they come, we will give them a proper briefing, the new ones, because they need to understand what is it they're dealing with, because there are times then they will need to be in there for whatever reason. They need to understand what makes sense and what doesn't make sense if they're in there. And they need to also understand that if they're in there, they need to let us know that they're in there. So if there's a problem, we can tell them to leave.
Absolutely. So they really do get special, what we would call special
Yeah.
information, advice, and guidance.
Yeah. So it depends on what you're doing and where you work in the island, then you would be dosed differently um, from the MVO.
Okay. So, of course, periods of increased volcanic activity can naturally create anxiety and uncertainty. How can science evidence, clear communication, and community engagement help people distinguish between understandable concern and unnecessary fear, enabling informed decision making?
Yeah. It doesn't matter where you are, there will be people that doubt what you're saying. I've seen it here, I've seen it in St. Vincent.
Okay.
There are some people who just wouldn't listen. But
Mhm.
you try your best to be as transparent as possible, because I mean you would be surprised about some of the conspiracy theories that you hear coming out of people, or coming from people rather, who think that we're hiding gold or silver or stuff from or diamonds even from the volcano, and we're not really telling anyone what's happening. We're stealing stuff, but the idea is to educate them once again, just to educate them and to develop this trust from them. Because if they understand what's happening, I think they're in a better position to make proper decisions about what needs to happen. So I think the issue is like oops, there hasn't been any um extrusion for a few years. So the average person who's here who hasn't seen the volcano erupt might not have an idea of what it means, or what it could look like. But there are people who know what it looks like, and some people are genuinely scared of it. But the idea is to get them to respect the volcano and not to be scared of it, because I respect it. So if you know what you should or should not do, then it simplifies things a bit. So we try our best, and I think it's not so prominent now, but whenever it's erupting, there used to be town hall meetings and stuff. We would have meetings in the communities. We would speak to the public, show them graphs and stuff. Some of them would like say no way if the graph doesn't say what they like, you know. So I remember there was one simulation that we did, and we more or less showed them that if you're in Plymouth and there was a proper collapse, it could take about 90 seconds to get to you, and they weren't happy with that. But that was a factual figure, you know. So it's getting them to come to terms with, okay, this is how dangerous the situation can be. And so if you're going in there, please be vigilant and not, you know, tell us that you're not going in there. Tell us that you're going in there. We need to know and follow the procedures. So it's about having them respect the volcano and how dangerous it can be.
Thanks for that. Why is it important for volcanic monitoring and scientific research to continue even during periods of relative quiet? And how does this ongoing work contribute to public safety, national planning, and future development?
Yeah, I think most well, this eruption has, I mean, this eruption has been unique compared to any other eruption in the Caribbean. And to be fair, the Caribbean is not really a hotspot for eruptions because the subduction is quite slow, so the eruptions are less frequent, and so are the earthquakes. But it's still a subduction zone nonetheless. But the most busy volcano in the Caribbean since humans have been living in the Caribbean would be St. Vincent. And the longest eruption that volcano has had would be 2 years. Most of them are like 6 months. You know, Mount Pele, maybe 2 years, I can't remember. But it wasn't that long. This eruption has showed us that volcanic systems can be long-lived. And basically, what it highlights is that you need to invest in the future generations.
Yeah.
Now, some years ago when I was watching a news clip, and I remember there was a peacekeeping mission, and I think there was an earthquake. I think it was in Pakistan or somewhere in one of these countries, but it was a Muslim country. And they sent Muslim peacekeepers. And they basically explained that you need people who understand the local population to be empathetic to what they're going through. Now, that didn't really dawn on me properly for this job until I went to St. Vincent. Because, you know, it's a different country, it's a different Caribbean country, but they're Caribbean people. We're all the same. They speak a bit different, but we are the same people. And because I went through what they went through, because I would have been here for this eruption as a school kid, so I knew what it meant to be on the other side of this, you know, and I saw what they were going through and I felt it for them because I was there long enough living amongst them to become friends with quite a few of them. So, and then I realized how important this job is. And then something happened, and some of the farmers were complaining about having to be evacuated, you know, and these people are pure farmers. They're not part-time farmers. That is what they do. They farm and they sell and they take the money from that to support their livelihoods. Now, if you move them, put them in a shelter, they can't earn a living. Now, I could appreciate that because I am a Caribbean person, but there was another staff member who I'm not going to name, who wasn't a Caribbean guy, and he just couldn't get it. You know, so I started to realize the importance of having Caribbean scientists working in Caribbean volcanoes, dealing with Caribbean people. And for me, the idea is to try and encourage as much youngsters as we can to become volcano scientists because the Caribbean is a volcanic region and there will be eruptions. It's a region filled with geohazards. I mean, volcanoes, earthquakes, landslides, you name it. But we need Caribbean people to be dealing with Caribbean people because we can understand what the issues are. We have empathy for each other and we can better deal with, yeah, we won't come across as not being, you know, kind.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is really important because when you, I mean, I got the vibe from them that in St. Vincent, that is that they don't want robotic robotic scientists. They want scientists who come across as human, who speak to them, chat with them, and empathize with them, and want to know what they're seeing and what they're dealing with.
And
So
you make such an essential point. So from a health and well-being perspective, we would describe you as a trusted messenger.
Well, yeah, I mean,
That's so important, sort of the point that you made, because we had that obviously during health crisis, whatever
yeah,
it might be, public health, that they're the most important people, the trusted messengers, and they come from all backgrounds. They have insight to the community, and
it is.
and when they share knowledge, information,
Yeah,
people are happy to take their guidance. So it's definitely something that we should develop. And
yeah.
really, it brings me to my final question, actually. Um, what role can young people play in developing Montserrat's future as a centre of excellence in earth science, geospatial technologies, environmental stewardship, and disaster risk awareness? And what opportunities exist for them to become involved?
Well, we have an internship program at the observatory. So every year we take about two high school students, fourth or fifth formers. There's actually one here at the moment. And what we do is we make them tag along with different scientists at different times just to see what is being done here and try and explain to them what is it we do. Because once again, we're hoping that they would be interested in becoming scientists in the future and come and work at the observatory or anywhere else in the region. So there is a big drive to educate and recruit the youngsters in Montserrat. You know, um, as we said, the volcanoes it has been going on for a while now. So the average adult is their own expert in volcanology. I mean, they think they know how the volcano works because they've seen it erupt so much times. And some of them would lecture me as to how it works.
Course, in fact, we call it community research. So what we say is that
Yeah.
evidence begins with experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true because I don't doubt that because I got quite a bit of information rather in St Vincent from the farmers, you know, because they would know how the volcano should look. So I always encourage them, if you're seeing something different, let me know, take photos, show me. I would buy them a few beers or some rum
Sure.
in return, but I got good information from them. So local knowledge is good. So I think the people of Montserrat now have adapted to the fact that there's a volcano in their backyard and it's not going to go away. So they have to find a way how to deal with it. And I think most of them have figured out how to live with it, and there are quite a few youngsters who are interested, which is good, which is good. We have our newest staff member, Tivon Howe. She's now has a PhD, but she was a student when I was in St. Vincent. She was my student at the time.
Right.
But I remember when she came here from the community college, she was doing her A levels, and she expressed interest, and she has been like really motivated throughout the entire journey, and that says a lot to me because what she chooses to do is what I do, which is not the easiest thing because we do a lot of hiking. We hike mountains. We do like 18-kilometer hikes. I mean, she could have chose to do earthquakes, but she didn't. you know, she chose to do what I did. So that more or less shows to me that she's definitely serious about what she's saying, and she is a good person to do this job. And she's a new member of staff, and she's most welcomed, and we have big hopes for her. And hopefully we can get a few more in as the years go on.
Well, we believe that you will do because the Volcano Awareness Month was in fact initiated by the SPECA KPS Stream
Yeah.
Academy. And of course, at the root of it is what we call Volcano Sankofa
Oh.
education.
Well, I need to retire soon anyway, so I need to get my replacements in.
Pass that baton.
Yeah, 18-kilometer hikes are not really something I want to be doing for too much longer.
Of course, of course, of course.
But yeah, I'm joking. But yeah, it's
Oh,
yeah, it's the future is looking good because there's also a young lady in St. Vincent. I think she's gonna start her master's soon. because she already had her first degree. And hopefully she's definitely interested in being a volcano scientist. So if she gets through, she'll be based down there up here. Who knows? But we need to get Caribbean people interested in geohazards because it's a geohazard region.
Absolutely, and that's part of the reason Dr. Schott and myself really established this first volcano awareness month,
Nice.
and it's an ongoing program. So every month there'll be a different aspect to the volcano, and of course there are great opportunities which you've kind of expressed there. Young people
Yeah.
volunteering, coming, and there'll be lots of different sort of projects, science projects, safe space,
Yeah.
it's safe for them to take part in
It is.
science-based projects. That's, I think, an important message to get across.
It's a very important message. And I think what's important to understand is that science progresses.
Yeah,
So whatever the techniques that are being used now, there might be improvements on them later in time.
yeah.
So, for instance, Dr. Hull, which I just mentioned,
Mhm.
when she decided to do her PhD, there was a big difference in how melt inclusion data was collected. Melt inclusion is bits of trapped magma inside of the crystal. And when you trap that magma, basically it it holds all of the conditions it was trapped under because it's sealed. So if you analyze that, you can tell the temperature, the pressure at the time it was trapped. But when she was doing her PhD, the techniques were much better and the understanding was much better. So the data was much different. So what I had to did rather was to redo the melt inclusion work on Montserrat. And we now have a much better understanding of the volcanic system because the data is much better, and it's moved around stuff. So it's progress, which is good.
It's that old saying, all science is based on practice.
Yeah, and now she's our multi-inclusion expert. So if there's a multi-inclusion issue, I would refer to her. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's good.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Thomas Christopher. But before you go, is there one message you'd really like to get across to all our communities?
Yeah, the resilience in Montserrat has been, well, I can't even put words to it. I think people here have gone through a lot and have found a way how to deal with this volcanic system because, as I said, this is the only volcano that would not go back to sleep
Yeah,
in the region. All the others would, disturb their population for a while and then stop. This one has not stopped. It's still going, but yet people are still coping. And I think it deserves a big thumbs up to how they've managed to deal with it, how they've processed the whole situation. And I think it means that there's a lot of strength in this country, and something that is worth noting.
yeah, and you're really describing strength and willpower.
Yeah, strong people.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Thomas, thank you very much. This has been our first SPECA KPS Volcano Awareness technical
Yeah,
dialogue. There will be many more. So thank you very much and good day. See you again soon.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.